Well, listen, I'm going to go ahead and make some introductions here. I'll introduce myself first. My name's Tony Wolf. I'm a viticulturist, professor of viticulture and a viticulture extension specialist with Virginia Tech, which is in Virginia. So we have two states represented tonight, Virginia and Maryland, and I was asked to come in and sit on the panel. It's about as close as it's going to get, or is it too close?
No, it needs to be going closer.
Okay. Unless I eat it, it's not going to get much closer. I was asked to sit on the panel tonight and talk a little bit about the terroir of Maryland and Virginia, which I'll explain a little bit, define that, and talk about that for a little bit. This originally was to be about an hour presentation, and I was just told that if I can keep my comments down to 10 minutes, people would be happy. So I'll try to do that. Also on the panel with me, to my left is Kevin Atticks, who's the Executive Director of the Maryland Wineries Association. We also have Greg Lambrecht, who he and his wife are here with Serpent Ridge Winery in Maryland. And Ed Boyce with Black Ankle Winery, also in central, are you Carroll County as well? Frederick County, part of Maryland. I think you've had an opportunity to try some of the wines. We have, again, several wineries from Virginia that are represented, several from Maryland that are represented. And I think, from my perspective, tasting the wines and seeing which wines are here, it's a pretty good representation of what Virginia and Maryland have to offer. So what I'll do is I'll kick this off, and it may go a little more than 10 minutes, may go a little less, but we do want to allow some time for some answers at the end. So I'll probably skip through some of the things that I plan to talk about, and I think maybe what's perhaps most important in terms of giving you a perspective of the Virginia and the Maryland wine industries is to talk a little bit about why we grow grapes where we do and how the grapes are growing. I think if you were to step back and maybe some of you did taste wines 15 years ago or 20 years ago from this region, if you were to compare them today with some of those same producers and other newer producers, you'd have to admit that the quality of the wines have improved a great deal. Why is that? Are there new technologies that have been brought to bear? Are the vintners and the wine growers themselves better at what they're doing? Has the world changed? Well, the answer to really all three of those questions is yes, but it's certainly a more complex issue than that. There's other things that are going on too, where we know more, we're more enlightened about where we should grow grapes and where we should not grow grapes, which varieties to grow, how to grow the grapes. There's been a tremendous educational program in this area to bring our wine growers up to world-class standards, really. So knowledgeable wine growers have really adapted to the peculiar features of this environment, and it is a very unique environment. Some say terroir. This is a French wine term that literally translates to soil, but more importantly and figuratively, or rather literally, or in practice, speaks more to the comprehensive manner and the sense of place in which grapes are grown. So it's not that we're looking just at soil type when we try to define what is a Maryland wine or a Virginia wine. We're looking at the total environment, both the aerial environment, the soil environment, the manner in which the grapes are growing, how the grapes are growing. So all of these things really come into play. Just a few comments on the physical environment. Virginia and Maryland, and for that matter really much of the eastern seaboard, is very unique in terms of grape growing. Some of the features that we have that present a challenge to us here are the fact that historically we've had very cold winters, or winters that are cold enough that limit the varieties that can be grown here. Many of the vinifera grapes, for example, the Chardonnay, the Bordeaux Reds like Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, are often damaged by temperatures much below about -5 degrees. So Fahrenheit. So if you go back 20 years or so ago and you look at some of the winter temperatures that we had back then, it'd be obvious to you when you see vineyards that, for example, came through winter colds of 1985, when we had vineyards that got down to minus 15 or minus 20 degrees, that is a challenging environment in which to grow these varieties. There really are not too many other well-established grape growing areas in the world that have to deal with those kind of winter extremes. There are other places of the world that get cold, and there are strategies that grape growers use to avoid that cold injury. But in terms of established grape growing seasons, if we look at the growing season, we have a climate that is also quite a challenge. We have, on a global basis, we're considered a warm to hot grape growing region. So we have to look at varieties that lend themselves fairly well to a hot or warm grape growing season. We don't consider ourselves a cool climate region, so you're going to be hard pressed to find some of the cool season varieties, things like Riesling or Gewürztraminer, that may do very well in a cooler region, just do not do that well here. The thing that really distinguishes us, aside from the winter temperatures, though, is the amount of precipitation, the variable nature of precipitation during the summer, and the fact that we often have excessive precipitation during the summer. Where else in the world are grapes grown in areas that are so wet? I mean, there's parts of southwest France that get some rainfall during the growing season. It's nowhere near as much as we get here in Maryland and Virginia. Eastern Europe, there's some areas. Eastern Australia, the Hunter Valley of Eastern Australia, has a somewhat similar climate. Uruguay, which many consider to be certainly not as big as the western countries of South America, but they have a decent industry in that part of the world. In Uruguay, they have a growing season climate that's very similar to ours. They don't have the winter injury problems that we do. So Virginia, if I can just recap a couple things, Virginia and Maryland are generally well situated on the eastern seaboard to avoid some of the more severe problems with winter injury during many of the years. And we're also far enough north that we don't have quite the heat load that some of the more southern states, the Carolinas and North Georgia, would have. So we're in a good position from an environmental standpoint in that regard, at least in the east, but we still have these challenges, particularly with the growing season climate, that we have to deal with. Now, I'm, again, in the interest of time, skipping over a few things here, but let me come back and focus on a few things with precipitation. What does that do? I mean, the fact that we have rainfall here during the growing season, well, it aggravates disease control. We do have fungal diseases that we have to combat here. That's part of our environment in which we grow grapes. There's really no place in the world that I know of that there aren't some diseases of grapes that you have to combat. But we have more of the wet weather pathogens. Some of the diseases that we have to deal with here present more of a problem than places that are more arid or dry during the growing season.